And start by a pledge of allegiance to the flag, if we may, please. A moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. I'd like to acknowledge that we had held an executive session this evening, August 17th at 6:30, involving the following matters under the corresponding sections of the Sunshine Act. Personnel matters, sections 708A, 1, and A5. I guess I should have started with, is there any public comment before we begin the agenda items? In-house? Any online? The people can explain how you do.
On Zoom, you're able to unmute yourself if you'd like to address council.
Okay. If there's none, then we'll go with the consent agenda, item 3, A through E. Can I get a motion to approve them in their entirety?
So motion.
Second.
Second, any comments, questions? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 4, Library Director, Shanna. Is going to go through the study that was done on the library, the needs and wants and so forth. It's item 4A in our package.
Hi. All right. Community Media has the slides. It's great.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
You gotta put them, there you go, thanks. Jumping the gun.
So first of all, I just want to thank council for taking the time. I mean, you guys have been thinking about these kinds of issues long even before I got here. I've been here for about a year now, and this has been ongoing, especially the 3 representatives who serve on the library work group. Bill Ricart, Tim Kress, and Chuck Hegberg have spent a ton of time in countless meetings over the last, 10, 11 months, thinking through all of these issues that face us. So what I'm going to go through tonight is kind of the culmination of what the library work group has been working on. And in consort with a consultant firm called J.R. Keller that the borough hired to help the library work group kind of figure out what are the needs of the library, what is the good and the bad and the ugly, what are the issues we're facing, and how can we move forward productively. So we can go, to the next slide. So I'm not going to read all this. You guys will, Dory, were you able to make copies of the slides for them at all, or no? Okay, sorry. We can get you copies. We can email this out so you guys can review the PowerPoint more in depth. But essentially, this is our timeline to date. So just kind of a quick overview of how long, even before this, that we've been thinking about this. Back in 2020, we approved the contract with Wirt to look at repairing the roof and dealing with the water intrusion in the library. That's been an issue for, 15 years or so now.
Since the building was built.
Yeah, pretty much since the addition was put on in 2006, yeah. In August, we approved the library work group charge, and if you'll hit the next, our goal should show up. So just a reminder of what we've been kind of working on is how can we improve the library's financial sustainability so that we can continue to have a strong public library that the Hanover community really loves and needs and that helps the residents accomplish their goals, but without putting an undue financial burden on the borough. So if we go to the next slide, again, real quick, this is just an overview of the charge of the library work group that council had approved last August. They were to look at these 5 areas on the screen: governance, regional relations, operations, building, and budget. So in the very long and very detailed report you got from the Keller Group, from these consultants, you'll see that they kind of formatted it along those 5 categories, because that's what those 5 things the work group was charged to look at. And the members of the work group, there were 3 borough council representatives, a member of the Library Board of Governors, and a member of the Hanover Public Library Association tasked with working through this. So on the next slide, just real quick to show you kind of how much time the consultants really spent talking to everybody who was willing to talk to them. They spent a lot of time talking specifically with these borough council representatives, spent a lot of time with borough staff. I especially want to thank Solicitor Schultes. I know it took a lot of time to kind of explain to them some of the issues around the deed restrictions in the original trust. Eric Maines spent a lot of time with them, and also Scott Lurker from Buchart Horn talking about the building issues and how we're going to deal with that. So they just did a lot of work. They, of course, talked to library staff, the Board of Governors. They were able to get some candid feedback and talk one-on-one with representatives from the neighboring municipalities in our service area, and also talked a bit with Representative Kate Klunk's office. I think CJ gave them a lot of really good information there. And they did some sessions with the general public also to find out, what do the residents of Hanover want from their library? What are we doing really good, and what do we need to be doing better in the future? So the next slide, we really get into sort of the key findings. This is the real top-level overview. This is kind of what's in that executive summary right at the beginning of their report. Before we even dive into those 5 areas, the consultants discovered that, the library is a strong and thriving community asset, and they heard from both library and borough leaders that they are both dedicated to the continued success of the library. But they also noted that the Borough of Hanover is assuming an excessive amount of municipal funding, and it's a lot more than the other surrounding municipalities in our service area. They did talk to some leaders from the surrounding municipalities and heard that they feel a disconnect from the library, that they don't feel the communication is open enough, they don't really understand why we ask for them for funding or how that funding is used. So that was something they discovered. There's a lack of defined responsibilities for the Board of Governors, for HPLA, the Hanover Public Library Association, and for the surrounding municipalities. It's really unclear right now sort of who's responsible for what, and how we figure that out. It was noted a few times that financial reports contain limited information sometimes. They're a little difficult to understand. That's a thing we can work on. They also noted there are a lot of opportunities in this area for increased public awareness, for advocacy, and for philanthropic support, that there are people who want to support the library, including financially and monetarily. And there's some opportunities that we're not really taking advantage of right now that we could be in the future. And they also noted that the original deed, the original trust that was set up, and this deed that back in 1910, 1911, that actually established the public library and that gave the building and the property to the borough, that document is a little vague. It's not super specific. It was written over 100 years ago, so it's kind of hard to figure out how are we supposed to interpret that today. And it requires a lot of legal interpretation. I mean, Solicitor Schultes.
Even the people that are named in it are vague, or the
People
terms
named in
are
it.
obsolete and such.
Yeah, they're long gone. Some of them we can't even find. There's just sort of reference to heirs. We don't know who those heirs are. Solicitor Schultes has spent a lot of hours poring over this document, trying to figure out what this means. I know he met with the consultants and talked about it with them. I know he and I have talked about it. I'm sure he's talked to a lot of you about it too. So that's another issue that we kind of have to figure out how to deal with, is how do we make sure that we move forward kind of knowing that. So on the next slide, and you can just click through because it's gonna like swipe all 5 of these things. I'm not gonna read all these to you because we're gonna go through them one by one on the next slides. But these are sort of their top recommendations in each of these 5 areas that the work group was charged with looking at. And if you read through this report, first of all, God bless you if you read through this report because it's very long and very detailed. You will see they made a lot of recommendations. There are a ton. There's a laundry list. But what I really pulled out for you here tonight is not all of these are things necessarily that Borough Council has to be responsible for. You know, some of these are things that I, as the library director, need to do and work on in the future. Some of these are things that maybe the Library Board of Governors needs to be working towards in the future, or the HPLA needs to work on. So I kind of pulled out the recommendations that are the most pressing and sort of the most, where we really need council input and council support to figure out how to move forward. So
When you say
yeah.
input, do you mean like opinion or money? Or perhaps both?
I was thinking opinion, but it could be perhaps both.
Okay, that's
I mean,
fine.
tonight I'm mostly just kind of opening the discussion, starting the conversation.
No, this is good. This is something that should have happened a long time ago.
Yeah, because, yeah, this is kind of the start of the process.
I think you're doing good at it, too.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah.
It is a little nerve-wracking to be up here facing all of these people.
Well, we're not,
There's just one.
we don't bite hard.
So yeah, on the next slide, we see the first area, I called it a goal, but really it's multiple goals in this area of governance. This one's kind of the biggie, right? And this was a large chunk of the report. And I'm not gonna take, you guys have a long agenda, it's gonna be a long meeting. So I'm not gonna take a ton of time to go into the weeds on this, but they outlined and identified a number of different governance structures that libraries sort of operate under, both around the state and kind of around the country. Some libraries are municipal entities, like we are right now. Some libraries are 501c3 nonprofit organizations. Some libraries are branches of a larger system. And so they have a laundry list. They outlined kind of the pros and cons of each of these structures. And I think when the library work group started meeting, originally we thought, or at least I thought, that that was kind of going to be the big question that we had to answer and that we had to answer first. And as we started looking through these options, it became pretty clear that with any of these governance options, the overall goal really needs to be to increase the ability of the library to sustain its own financial operations independently without all of this additional borough subsidy beyond, the fair share payments and the building, but that the borough is financing us well and above and beyond that, and well more than their fair share.
Well,
And
it's the
that's
borough
really the crux of the
taxpayers, too,
issue.
just to be clear. It
Yeah,
isn't-
absolutely.
The borough is just a median, to pass essentially money through, but,
Yeah, that it's the borough taxpayers that are really taking on kind of more than their fair share. I think someone in the meeting called it the unfair share. I think that's,
Pretty good.
kind of telling. So as we do need to, think about our governance structure and really consider the financial implications of any change in governance structure, really keeping in mind what the borough needs and what the library needs. But this financial sustainability seems to be a real crux of the issue. And there are many potential ways to kind of address that, like increased fundraising, increasing the size of the endowment, trying to increase fair share payments from other municipalities. All of these things and all these other goals that we're going to go through, they kind of work hand in hand. So regardless of what governance structure we end up with, that financial sustainability is key. One of the other things they identified, because our structure is so confusing and there are so many different stakeholders, is that they recommended creating some sort of memorandum of agreement between like the Board of Governors representing the library and the borough, that's sort of based on that original deed and trust, trying to make sense of what the roles and responsibilities are there. And also MOUs with the surrounding municipalities to really show that, we are serving residents beyond the borough and that it's important, we serve those taxpayers too, and those taxpayers should maybe also be contributing.
Just for
yeah.
point of clarification for the council,
Sure.
of York County, I believe, well, we have 16 school districts, I know that, but I believe we have the only library that is owned and operated by a municipality exclusively.
Yes.
Every
That's right.
other York County library is owned and operated by the York County Library System. Is that correct?
It's close to correct. So we are the only.
That gets me by, usually close enough, right?
Yeah.
But,
We are the only municipal library.
okay.
There are 13 libraries in the York County Library System. We are a part of the York County Library System,
Right.
but we're not a branch. We're a member library. So there are 5 member libraries, including us. The other 4 are all independent nonprofit organizations, all on their own. So they have their own boards, they have their own budget, they have their own administration. We have our own board, we have our own budget. We just, instead of being a 501c3 nonprofit, we are a municipal entity. And in Pennsylvania, that is fairly uncommon. In other states around the country, it is a little more common for a public library to be a governmental agency. But in Pennsylvania, it's only about 15% of libraries are municipal entities. It's just a
Okay.
quirk of how they were established however many years ago. But yeah, so there are 5 member libraries like us and then 8 branches. But that's a point I wanted to make that gets lost a lot in these discussions. As a member of York County Libraries, we do get a very significant benefit, especially a very significant economic benefit. So York County Libraries provides all of our IT infrastructure, for example.
Right.
So all of the computers in the library. I don't have, for example, I don't have a hanoverborough.gov email address. I have a yorklibraries.org email address because I'm on the York Libraries network. They pay for our network infrastructure, and it's their IT guy that comes and fixes our computers when they're broken. And they also provide all of our electronic resources, which is easily several $100,000 a year that we get gratis from York County
Hardware,
Libraries.
software, networking, and
Yeah.
fixing.
Yeah, and then all the ebooks that we provide. So in my monthly report, you get all these statistics, and it's just a line item on there. It says Access 360. And of course, most of you probably don't know what that means because you're not librarians, and I should have made that more clear on my reports. But that's our ebook system. And YCL provides that to us for free. So they pay however many few $1,000s a year to have the Access 360 software available to all of our patrons, including ours here in Hanover. And then they also buy all the individual ebooks that we can then make available to the folks here in Hanover. And we don't pay any money for that, which is a really huge benefit to us. So
Well,
even
we
though
do
we're
in our
not a
county
branch.
taxes. Be
Yeah.
careful, we do.
YCL is a nonprofit.
YCL is a 501c3 nonprofit
it's not
organization.
county.
They are not a county government agency. They are not
Oh,
funded by the
okay.
county government.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's a weird thing. You hear public library and you assume it's a government agency because that's what most public entities are. But in Pennsylvania, 85% of public libraries are private nonprofit organizations, similar to like the YMCA, just like any other nonprofit. So they have to do all their own
The YMCA
fundraising.
has memberships, which we don't.
Correct.
True.
Paid memberships, that's the big differentiator. But my
True, so that's not a
point I
great
wanted everybody to
example, but yeah.
understand is, we are within York County, Hanover Borough, we're rather unique where we have our own
Very.
library and fund it, because basically no one else has one. And certainly if they do, it's nowhere near to the scope or magnitude that we do. So the library is a real asset to our community, something
Yeah.
we should be proud of.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things. The library is a real kind of feather in Hanover's cap. We are the most used library in York County.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so more so than Martin Library in York. In 2021, we had more foot traffic, more circulations. We see, on average, about 400, sometimes 500 people walk through our doors every single day, 6 days a week. It's a lot. So we've only been able to do that because the borough has been so great about providing support for the last 100 years. I think that's a significant thing that we probably don't thank you enough for, and that we probably don't mention enough. But the borough has put a significant amount of support into this library and has been able to build it into the community hub that it is today, and that's really important. I mean, we have people, just last week I had someone from South Carolina come just to see the library, and that's pretty common. We have people from Wisconsin, from Kansas, and they don't come here, they're not visiting family, they're not visiting friends. They're here to do research in our specifically Guthrie Library, primarily because of our Pennsylvania room,
In the
where we
PA
have a lot
room,
of
yeah.
historical documents.
And anybody that's never been in there, it's remarkable, the family and history resources that
Yeah.
are there, just,
So it's a real boon to tourism and to history. We have things that like the York County the York County History Center doesn't even necessarily have, because they're not interested in collecting the super granular things. They focus on the county. So anyway, I'm sorry, I could talk about libraries all day. I'll try to speed it up. So the next slide, we talked a little bit about regional relations, about the need to improve communications with the surrounding municipalities, making it a little more clear, you know, why do we ask them for support? You know, yeah, it's a pretty easy sell. It's just there's like an education and an advocacy piece that's been missing for the last few years for completely understandable reasons. And looking to increase partnerships and program opportunities for the other municipalities in our service area. So the state defines our service area, you know, who we get to ask for this sort of municipal funding. And it includes Hanover Borough, Penn Township, West Manheim Township, and Paradise Township. And again, those are the ones outlined in your report.
but not
Not Adams County.
Adams County,
Now, Adams County is part of Adams County
which
Library's
is
service area.
almost a third of our users.
Yes. I will note here too that we already do some programming and opportunities in these neighboring municipalities. So we do weekly story times in Penn Township, for example, and out at Cadoris Park, which I think is Manheim Township. So we could certainly increase those opportunities and make people more aware of them, but we've gotten a good start there. The next slide has sort of this third area that we've been looking at as a work group with library operations, where the consultants noted that, you know, we should continue to develop the library as a community hub. Look at, you know, I think we've talked about, like in public works meetings, possible renovations to the Bear Center. You know, as we look at these sorts of things, build in flexible spaces so that we can make the maximal use of the space that we have. You know, we rent these meeting rooms and we make revenue out of that, and there's a way to potentially increase that revenue if we have, you know, spaces that we know are flexible and people want to use. And looking at exploring additional partnerships, which we've been laying some groundwork over the last year for that already. We're now a Trail Towns friendly business. We are a member of the York County Economic Alliance and Explore York. Those are some new memberships for Guthrie. YCEA and Explore York both were pretty excited to have Guthrie on board because they noted our potential to bring tourists into the area. These folks who were coming in from out of state to do research. And those are people who, you know, are potentially staying downtown and eating at downtown restaurants, putting money in borough parking meters. So that there's potential there for growth. And we have started establishing programs and partnerships with some of the other area nonprofits. So like the Hanover Area Council of Churches, the YMCA, the YWCA, New Hope Ministries, Roots for Boots, Rotary. We've got ongoing things with all of those folks. So we continue doing that as one of the recommendations and to expand on that. The next slide, Area 4 with the building. Primarily the recommendations there are just continuing the roof project as has already been planned and approved by council. Once we have the water intrusion mitigated up on the roof, then there are some future decisions to make about, well, we're gonna have this enclosed space up there. What do we do with it? Is there a way to potentially make that a usable community space? Is there a way to make that a revenue generating space somehow? Can it be a business incubating opportunity? There's tons of ideas there, and there's grants and things we can get so that the borough doesn't have to pay to implement some of these ideas. But just to not lose sight of the opportunities there. And then the next slide, The fifth area with the budget, their recommendations here, and this chart comes right from the report. So if you can't see it on your screen, you will be able to find it. I don't know what page it's on right now. But their recommendations are strengthening library funding beyond just municipal support. So, if you run a business, I've often heard about diversifying your revenue streams. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So we shouldn't be entirely municipally funded. And we're not currently, but there's a lot we could do to make this pie chart a little more even. One of the ways they suggested was increasing the capacity of the library to raise funds through hiring a fundraising and development manager and working more with the Board of Governors and HPLA to do that fundraising. I will note here, I'll get to it in just a second, but we did ask the Borough Treasurer, Jim Shelton, to come to our latest library work group meeting and kind of go over we did a 5-year look back and some projections at kind of the library finances and the impact of our budget. And we did note in that report, it really jumped out at us that in 2018, which is the year that the library last had a fundraising and development person on staff, our donations increased by almost $100,000 in just that year alone. Now that person only was here for a year, and then that position was never
What year was this?
refilled.
2018?
2018, yeah. So that was really kind of eye-opening to see the impact that just that one position could have. Fundraising, it's a professional area of expertise, it's a thing people get graduate degrees in. There's a real science behind it, and if we can tap into that expertise, there's a lot of opportunity for growth there. And of course, advocating for library funding on a broader scale. So state funding for libraries has been slashed since 2009, has not yet been restored. So we have felt that crunch. The less state and county aid that comes in, the more the borough has had to kind of fill that gap. And that has kind of resulted in this undue burden.
Well, there's less and less aid and yet more and more rules and regulations to comply with.
Yes, there are.
With less and less aid to pay for it.
Yes, state library code is long and complicated. So on the next slide, we did have, when Jim met with us, he did also have some preliminary recommendations that I threw in here as he was looking at our financial projections. And he also, got to see this report. He again noted that hiring a fundraising and development manager who could really focus on growing our fundraising activities and expanding our business offerings is really a good kind of short-term goal. It's something that we can see, not necessarily immediate impact, but some of these things that we need to consider, like changes in governance structure, are long-term sorts of things. They could take a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years to kind of really change a governance structure and kind of build that from the ground up. But a fundraising person, we had somebody for a year and they already were bringing in an extra $100,000 that we didn't have before. And if they were able to be here even longer, how much that could grow. He again noted that negotiating these MOUs with our municipal partners to support our services is an important thing that we should be looking at. Building up a financial reserve to address potential future shortfalls and operating funds. I don't want to speak for Jim, but I'm going to guess that's a thing he would just recommend across the board for the borough, probably not specifically for the library department, but just in general, seems like a good idea. And of course, continuing to leverage the infrastructure that we get from YCL because we're a member library. So we know we already get significant cost savings because they pay for all our IT and they buy all our ebooks. They pay for about half of our summer programming with the youth services and the children's summer reading program. And there's maybe even potential there for me to do some research and see, are there things that they could also be providing that we're not currently taking advantage of that would help us see some additional cost savings. So the point of this presentation primarily was to kind of give a high-level overview of the report that the Keller Group had put together for us. And there's a few kind of takeaways I really want to leave you with. The library is well positioned to improve its financial sustainability. There is funding out there that is available to us to ease the burden on the borough taxpayer. And there's more we could be doing to take advantage of that. I do want to remind
Do
folks.
you view that as your role or the development person's role?
It's both, really. So I've been starting to lay some of that groundwork with like the nonprofit partnerships that we've been doing, working more with YCL, getting that support. But we really need that fundraising role is really crucial. And having that fundraising expertise, which is not, you know, a library director has a different kind of background than a fundraising manager.
No, I get that. And your
so, yeah.
predecessor sort of dabbled in, well, not dabbled, she was actually very good in both.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But even in, I think it was 2018, she was still, you know, there was both, and it really
Right.
helped. I do just want to be mindful, like, I know, I mean, I've only been dealing with this for a year now, and some of you have been talking about this a lot longer. I know that it really feels sometimes like we're spinning our wheels here. So I have a note here that like, this is a process. I know it can feel like we're not getting anywhere, but I think we really are. I've seen a lot of forward progress just in the last 6 months or so, and it takes time to implement change. These are some really big and thorny issues that you guys are wrestling with when it comes to providing services for your people, for your residents in Hanover.
Well, our residents and for our taxpayers and
Yeah,
our.
and even our neighbors, right?
Neighbors, yeah, that's a good way to put it, not non-taxpayers, but our taxpayers and our neighbors, which are 2/3 of our users, more or less.
Yeah. So these are thorny issues. If there was a surefire, easy solution, I'd love to give it to you, and I think you guys would have found it by now, if there was an easy path. So it can feel like we're really we are making forward progress, is the point I want to make there. Even though sometimes that progress can feel a little more slow than we'd like, we are getting there. The action that we're really looking for council to take tonight, there's kind of two things we're doing. So I'm going to give you all a chance in a second to ask me questions you have. Let me know what other information you need so that we can continue this process, open this conversation, and move forward. But there's one thing that we kind of have been identifying, and that library work group identified as kind of an immediate need that would really help to take some of the financial pressure off in the short term as we continue to work on these more long-term solutions. And that's increasing the ability for the library to sustain its operations by rehiring that fundraising and development manager and giving us more of an ability to do more fundraising and to generate more revenue. And that's a key position, any nonprofit organization. Nobody ever likes asking people for money, but it's just a thing nonprofit organizations kind of have to do. And there's a real art and a science to it.
Do we have an existing job description, profile, all that?
Yeah,
for-
so I have the one previously when the title was a little different. So if council agrees to move forward with this, I'm gonna update that job description for today, and we'll have that for your meeting next week for you guys.
Yeah,
I'll have it to you immediately so you can look at it for your meeting next week.
I think that needs to go through Amy, because
Yes.
she's our acting pretty much everything.
Amy is our everything.
Or no, not acting, she is our, but that's, yeah.
But yeah, that was the plan. Was that right, Amy? Yeah, that we'd work together to put that.
And you're on board with this conceptually, Amy? Okay.
So that's sort of the thing tonight, and that, you'll see that on your agenda, it's coming up next. But on the next slide, the other big thing is that, just as we look ahead, based on your feedback tonight, based on these financial projections that Jim is gonna put together, you know, I'm gonna collect your questions, your feedback, your comments. We're gonna take them back to library work group, who's gonna work with the rest of you folks on council. And the plan is that in September, we'll be able to bring forward a preliminary strategy plan and a proposed timeline for you all to vote on. And it gives you guys a chance as council to meet and start discussing these specific details and really hash through some of this stuff that work group has been wrestling with, but now needs to come to the whole group.
You're separating the building capital needs / issues from the recurring operational
Yes,
needs.
yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's been a thing that
I
we've
knew
talked a
that,
lot
I
about
just-
in work group.
I wanted to make sure we're all on that page, because to me, to us, they're different, but both very important issues.
Yeah, and you see them both in the library part of the budget, right? But
Okay.
there's sort of the building and the debt that's on the building. I mean, even if we shut down the library tomorrow, that
Still owes
building
money.
debt is still there, and you still have to pay it.
But the recurring issues like water, sewer, trash, electric, and all that, you need to deal with as recurring.
Yeah, yeah, it's our annual operating expenses that are, that
Okay.
we're really focused on, that,
And Jim,
Yeah.
you're on board with that? Perfect, thank you.
yeah, and I do have, Jim's on hand here if you have some financial questions like that I can't answer. Jim has agreed to kind of pinch hit for me there.
Just take the bullets.
Can I interrupt you just?
But yeah, go ahead.
As a point of order to help facilitate this, have we all been given the study? I thought I heard.
Yeah, it was in your
Yes.
council packets.
Okay.
We all
Has
have it.
everyone seen it? No. Okay, so whether, I just want to say, whether you have questions now that you're prepared, or we will revisit this. This is the landing spot for this issue. It does not fit in any other committee,
Right.
and it is probably one of the largest issues that we are wrestling with. So this is staying here in front of the entire group, not going to some smaller subset.
Right, and
So if you're not prepared tonight for a question, you're not being rushed into a decision.
No, not at all.
This isn't going anywhere quickly. I just want to make that point.
I
this
do
is
have questions.
Okay,
the.
I think maybe
the
it's time
release
to
of it.
transition into.
Yeah, my last slide is just a thank you, so we can easily transition into questions.
I
and
think it
discussion.
would be just in the consideration of time too, that we should review this, because it is actually really good. I'm impressed with the output of it, because it's got a lot of actionable stuff in it.
Counselor
As-
Funk does have a question or
so-
two.
I don't have one.
I would like us if we could, but just to end on that, if we put together a list of questions and email them into
I was gonna offer
Shanna.
that too. You can email me questions, or you can email them to Amy, who can pass them to me.
And I don't know the technical process, but I do think that, having a meeting to discuss details and some of the issues that we went through in private on it.
Oh, yeah.
It would be important.
Yes.
Definitely in order, yeah. This is,
Yeah, it might need to be like a special meeting.
Because that could be a
kind of
2 or
thing.
3 hour discussion yet
Well, I
this
think
evening.
it's important for the entire council to know every step that we kind of went through and how we looked at this and what decisions we're gonna need to make moving forward on it. And it's been thoroughly looked at on it and, recognizing there are some significant challenges with how we handle the deed and the trust and how the MOA and the agreement is between the borough and the library and so there's
one
a
of the
number of
most
steps we
actionable-
have to look.
But this is one of the most actionable studies, and I've been critical on studies and so forth in the past, but this is actually an assessment and a sort of a recommended path forward, pros and cons of different aspects of that. And
What's not
think it's-
actionable at the moment, because that's where we have to have our conversation, is what Shana was saying, is in the elected governance. The consultants, and I specifically requested that they did not provide that recommendation, that we look at those and look at the pros and cons to make a decision on the governance of it.
so would the committee, yourself, Mr. Kress, and President Ricart be the ones to facilitate that meeting of the 11 of us?
yeah. So the model was always to try to involve more of a subgroup in this whole process, and then to bring on the consultant, which you've seen the results of that process to this point. We're
Right.
now still functioning as a committee, but we're getting quickly to the point where council then needs to be the decision maker and make that decision. So the thinking is that then through that committee would come back and in essence make a recommendation, moderated discussion somehow with council to help initiate some of these, for lack of a better word, initiatives. So that's the timeframe. Counselor Funk, do you have a question this
More
evening?
than one.
Okay,
I stayed up very, very late.
you read it?
And I read it all. Now, did I put it in my brain and it's all there? No, I'm not at that age, okay? And I have to
okay.
go back and I have to check things out. I think what I am looking at is some things that the library has to give and take with the people of Hanover. and you have been very thorough. You have laid everything out there. I don't think there's anything hidden, okay? And I absolutely commend you on that. I had a hard time with the staff expenditures of 74%. And I do not mind, as a council person, giving you what you are asking for a fundraising manager to come in. And you said also, it may not show profitability at the beginning, but we work on it. You also have to hire the right person. Now, we're talking another $50,000, okay? Not including all the other entities that flow into this when you hire them.
Well, Darlene, it'd be
But-
more like 80 by the time you
Yeah,
get
with
the benefits on it.
yeah.
Right, thank you.
Just to put all on the
But
table.
I don't have a problem with that. But what I do have a problem with is that during the inflation, everything that we are going through, there has to be a give back. You have to return to the people something in order to try to cut down on expenses. One of them is under 74% of staffing. I thought you had 16 employees and found out that you had 7 full-time and 12 part-time.
I believe we're down to 11 part-time with Alyssa leaving, or is that not?
Well, then this report isn't correct because it said 7 full-time and 12
Yeah,
part-time.
we just had someone resign a few weeks ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be in your report for next
We
week.
had some people that, like, say that we had a person who was working 20 hours, then they reduced down to 10, and so we hired somebody else to pick up the other 10.
Right.
Overall, the library is staffed based on hours. So even though it's.
I understand that,
Yeah.
Amy.
So
I do
that's-
understand
All right, I
that,
just want to
okay?
make sure.
Yeah, no.
I
this is-
understand they're being paid hourly for the work that they're doing. Okay, they're not on salary. I
It's
realize
also
that.
operational hours.
No, we're talking operational
Not-
hours.
Right.
Sheena needs.
Of the hours that they're open,
Right.
correct.
Yeah, we don't,
The number
Right.
of coverage.
Right.
yeah, instead of counting people, we say, it takes, X hundred hours to operate the
Well,
library a week, but I know what you mean.
At this point, we're
Yeah.
talking 74%
Yes.
of the expenditure of the library goes to the staffing.
Yes, which is a lot.
Now, if we're going to hire a full-time person to go in and start really, and you have to pick the proper person to do this, you know that. And it may end up that if you have to pick the proper person, they may slightly go over. You could come back and say, we really have to look at maybe 55, 60,000. But at this point, in being fair to the entire town of Hanover, all the taxpayers, and I will tell you, I'm looking at this, we are fair share for us alone was 200, I think the borough's final contribution was $231,686.
Yes,
The
in
other
2021.
municipalities only paid in $81,000 over a period of 2015 to 2021, fair share, okay? With the library being defined, and the deficit is coming to $2,239,777. I'm gonna tell you, the people in this town, me included, I want a library. But I want to begin to say to you, what are you going to do to help our taxpayers?
Yep.
It's coming out of their pocket.
Absolutely.
And they are being taxed to death. Now, do you hire that full-time person, which you say we will need, and Jim says we need, to make you more sustainable on your own, okay, which hasn't happened for years. And I'm gonna put it that way bluntly. Are you going to cut down on the staff by maybe 2 and then hire the full-timer? How do you give back to people who are so taxed, trying to make it, okay, and the tax, and it seems like every time that we want to do something, it's go to the taxpayer. You cannot continue to do this. You cannot. I can't continue to sit on this council, knowing what I know, and then ethically and morally say that I come to you and say, let us talk this out. But is there a way of hiring the full-timer and doing something in the library that will cut the expenditures?
It's possible. I don't have an answer for that
Okay, and I
today.
know you don't, but I'm presenting it.
But yeah,
You know,
so it's a
and-
thing that, Jim and I, it's budget season, so as a department head, we're looking at the budget, we're gonna meet on that at some point.
Right.
We did have a staff person who just recently resigned,
Right.
and that's a position we are not looking to refill.
So
We are
that
planning
could
to
go,
absorb that
particular
position.
wage or whatever could go toward,
Exactly.
that's what I'm looking at.
so that's
Where
something
do
that we're
we
doing
begin?
right now.
Right. Let's see if we can't, $50,000 or 60, okay? And then we're gonna be doing reconstruction of a umbrella roof
Mm-hmm.
over the library. The mold has to be there behind that facade, okay?
Oh, I don't know, maybe.
I think it does, because you had water dripping down inside those walls. But you won't know till you take it apart. But at this point, I want to work with you, and I want you to work with us, okay? I want to begin to pay for that person by asking in the library what it is that you can give up in order to function and meet the paycheck of that that new person. If they work out, and it only takes 2 years at the most, I mean, you can't promise us that you're going to be rolling in self-support and fundraisers because you really don't know. And we don't know what the world has to offer as far as economical, the money and everything that's coming down.
But
So,
you're also competing with other local fundraising organizations.
we
and
are.
there
but
is
we
a,
still-
we do
we
know-
there's a
need-
limited
we
amount of
need a
money.
We know the
library.
funding is there, though. I mean, we've
Okay,
had
I just-
consultants
Okay.
come in, and there's a way to find out what the
Right.
fundraising capacity is for a community. And they've hired consultants, HPLA did this in, what was it, 2017, 2018. So we know the capacity is there, and we're just not tapping into it very
I
effectively.
understand, and
So that
from what I
helps.
read,
If
this is a
we're-
very
Yeah.
giving,
It
especially
is.
the
We
borough.
have a very generous
It's a very
community here.
giving town, but I don't know that you can increase the amount. Perhaps, we have to be careful, we're not stealing it from somewhere else, essentially.
I think
Just
it begins now.
a point
We
to be
begin to
reckoned.
work together
Yeah.
to see how in just this one area, we can win for the Gipper. And, you've already said one has walked away from their position or whatever. So all I'm saying is, let's try to cover that 50,000, well, 80,000. By working together, that if we are going to add, what do we subtract?
Right.
That, everybody's on a budget. And if we can do that together, then we can really work ahead on other areas. But I'm looking at the taxpayer, I'm looking at what they paid out of pocket all these years. And also Adams County is a great user of our library.
Yeah.
Great, and thank you
our-
for all
our
that.
position on the
You were
border here.
terrific.
Yeah.
You gave me so much meat
Yeah.
to sit there and hang on. I'm like, thank you. You have been so on board with us that I can't tell you how happy I am that I can sit here tonight and talk with you.
Thank you. Just to move in and keep us moving forward, it seems like you've transitioned us into the question of the next agenda.
Did I?
You definitely,
Yes, you did.
you took us right there as far as that,
Okay.
that position. I think, unless there's any other specific library questions or,
I was just gonna say, is it possible, in other words, this person's gonna be hired as a fundraiser for the library. Is it possible that maybe we could lower the salary a little bit and then offer some sort of commission? In other words, if you bring in, because I just think maybe that would be a little more incentive. I don't know if
That's an
typically.
idea the Board of Governors
Some of
had,
them,
yeah.
if they operate
I like
like
that
that,
idea,
then, if you can bring us in $2 million a year, we'll
Right.
gladly give you.
Almost like a bonus
Like
or
a
Well,
incentive.
there's also
Very
third-party
good.
I think it would have
rep
to be a consultant.
organizations that do it, but I don't,
I don't know
Chris,
I don't know.
good idea.
if we do that with a borough employee versus a consultant.
Right.
No,
That's
I-
a question I'm gonna defer to our head of HR, who knows these things.
Well, I mean, that
I-
is a question I'm not sure of, but I mean, I think that if you're all willing to move forward with, a motion to approve a hire, we can maybe talk more about a salary structure and see if maybe we start even at 40,000 with I mean, there has to be a balance, because we want somebody who has the right talent.
Right.
Right?
Who
Right, we don't
has the
wanna
right
lose them
experience. We
after a
don't
year
want
like we did
someone.
last time.
Right,
Right.
it takes 5 years' worth of training at $40,000 a year.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
We want the right person, but we also want there to be some sort of measurable results.
Absolutely.
And so I think that, to Darlene's point, if we could kind of, agree that Shayna will not fill the current vacant position, so we're really only taking on another half of a person, so to speak.
Well, it's the
as far
total
as-
dollars
but-
in salaries and
Right.
benefits. That's the real question. It's the
Right.
number of people is interesting.
The other
Right.
thing
But
is
it's-
that you need to get, as you said, you gotta get the right person. You're gonna
Correct.
bring the money in if
And
they're
you
the
may
right
have
person.
to pay
We
for that
can't-
person more
we're
than you're
asking-
expected to pay for it. But Chris has a good idea with earning commission off of what they are generating to bring
If they
in. I
can
like that
legally
idea.
do that
I like that idea.
under the employment of the borough, it may not be able to do that way. It may have to be a consultant or
Maybe
something.
we
Right.
can't, but
Or a
I really like
1099
the
employee.
idea.
It's fine. My
Someone on the
point
Board of Governors
is,
also had that idea, so
Yeah.
it's.
Oh,
it's-
really?
yeah.
Okay.
I think, but that all comes with the job description and so forth,
Right.
that I believe the two you're gonna
Yes.
work forth. And I sort of doubt you're gonna have it together by a week from now, but if you do, great.
I think we can, because I think at this point, it's been, this recommendation is coming from the consultant, it's coming from our finance director, it's coming from me as, the HR person, looking, you put
HR
your-
person slash borough
slash-
manager slash.
you put your trust in me to evaluate these situations and really only bring to you positions that I really feel strongly that you should approve, and this is one of them.
Well, can I say for the
I
council
feel like
that-
we vetted out everything, and this part, no matter what happens with the organization of the governance of the library, this position will be an asset to the library. So,
Right.
Yeah, but for the
Those are
council,
for
I think
next
we,
month's
but I
decisions.
think we directionally, if you will, approve this. We're there. The description needs to be finalized. The
Yep.
compensation method and amount needs to be defined. The deliverables slash metrics for
Yep.
the person needs to be defined. But I think directionally, that you've got
Well,
a
Scott,
majority of votes
Scott, I
here.
trust Amy. She has not, she's been right on the button with everything.
Yep.
But know that I do want as much deducted from that 50,000 that you can possibly give us for this person. I finally want to see us all working, giving back to the community. And when I see the community with this for years, you're a fresh breath of air, okay? And, no, and I do say this because originally, the people were just expected to pay 200 and some $1,000 or 300 and some, wherever it laid. This is so unfair, and this is why the people feel a lot of the way they do. They want a library. No, they want it. I want the library. You're very important, okay? But we've got to curb. We've got to curb now.
Measurement of good and bad.
Yeah,
So
we're
the
definitely.
consensus
motion.
opinion of
Look at-
the wish of council is to, in theory, say, yes, we are supporting the hiring of the
Right.
position
But-
to be defined.
Pending a
Yeah.
job description
Pending a
and
job
a
description.
salary, which we
Salaries
will
and
have
Yep.
next week.
And a set of metrics that we say, we
Mm-hmm.
can look at this person a year or 18 months from now and say,
Yes,
yes, this is working,
met their
or
goals.
no, this is not. And,
yep.
Right.
well,
okay,
I think we just
I
segued
also
into
wanna
the.
say, I mean, let's not be stupid too and cut the cost so much that you don't get somebody
Exactly.
worthwhile. This
Well, no,
person-
exactly.
Time out. Everyone else has had their say, okay? This person needs to work with the governors too, because
Right.
quite frankly, I don't think they know what they're supposed to be doing, and I'm not sure they're really pushing to raise funds. I mean,
The
it's
governors,
just,
as in the.
yeah, I think
The
there's
Board
so
of
much
Governors.
confusion as to who's responsible
Well,
for what.
I agree with you.
And-
There's a
and I
lot
think-
of overlapping authority
with
of
that, too.
But
sorts.
they can help, this person can help, but the
Because they're
fact
connected. The
is,
governors are well connected.
we can't, we're asking the library to take on more responsibility of their sustainability and fundraise. We can't tie their hands,
That's
say, go
right.
do it, but we're not gonna
Yeah.
give you the tools to do it.
And that is
And
why I
let's have the
told.
right person.
Right, and that's
If
why I
it's
said, she may
50,000,
have to go to 60,000.
But if.
You
the-
have to open that up. Chuck, you're
Right.
right. You have to open it up, Scott.
I'm with you, but I think what we agreed on is, as long as Shannon manages the total number, it doesn't really matter. If you save a little more and pay a little more for a better person, as long as we stay within the total number for salary and
And we
benefits,
give and take. Yep.
is that I think that's a pretty
Yes.
fair
Yeah, I think so,
expectation.
too.
I mean, just,
You know-
again, I think there was a lot of perception when we first started that the borough was supposed to be going and asking for the money.
Yeah, nobody's gonna give government money.
That was the thing, I mean, that's,
You know, like,
we're not in
there
that
is actually a
position to do
department
that.
of the United
That's
States
correct.
Treasury
So-
that takes donations. I can't imagine they're that busy.
Historically, there was a discussion and/or an effort whereby, because of some of the conflicting aspects of being a municipal government and only raising funds through taxes, and if you haven't gotten anything out of this discussion, this entity of the library sort of flirts with that line in several places. There were discussions and there were things being put into place whereby the Friends of the Library Association was a better entity that could employ someone who could professionally raise funds that was not as encumbered as a municipal government like we are through an employment relationship. I'm hearing both sides of things now, and I'm wondering maybe whether that shouldn't be something that goes back to the library committee and let this one hold for 1 month, albeit
Or
it's an
this,
important
you,
thing.
you guys recommend
To
the reporting relationship.
Figure out the logistics of whether the Friends could be the employer or engage in some type of a, what was the word you used? Consulting type relationship with
Right.
this individual.
Like a 1099 third-party thing.
Well, my
Okay.
concern there is that that opportunity has been available for how many years, and it hasn't happened. So if
Within
we
the-
continue to do nothing, or if we continue to expect one of these other organizations to step up and do this,
It's not gonna happen.
we
Because
don't.
there's nobody in
We
charge.
don't know that it's gonna happen.
Right, there's
And
nobody-
if we take the initiative and say, let's fill this position, let's see what this person can do, let's see how much change it can,
And
you
we've done
know,
it before.
and
We
it
know
was-
how to do it.
it
We have the
was-
infrastructure.
then, you know.
But can any of the professionals in the room, you're speaking, and when I'm asking you, and you can decline to answer, as well as the expertise of Solicitor Schultes, can you comment on the prospect of council entering into an incentivized contract for this position whereby if they raise over a six-figure amount, that they then are compensated at an additional amount? Can you tell me if we can do that?
I can't.
Okay. Solicitor
Could we
Schultes?
take the time?
Without research.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm sort of
Yeah, I don't want to
hearing.
rush into this, but what I'm saying
wanna rush
is
into it either.
that we owe on the library for another 5 years. And that is going to be taking another 600,000, whatever, out of the taxpayers' pocket. We're paying for that, okay? We're paying for decisions that were made before any of us got here, okay?
Yes.
And I hear from the people of the borough. I want the library to be a success. And you can look at me and I will look you in the eye and this is what I want. But that 50,000 plus all of the benefits that go with it, we have got to figure out. You want me to give you approval? Then you come back to me and say to me personally as a council person, this is where we can pay for it and how we're going to do it, first time round. Because this is what we have to begin to do. We just can't say, well, we're just going to, hire this person, and the people are going to be paying an additional amount of tax out for this. No, it has to stop now. We have to begin a whole new plan. for the people of this town. And this is the beginning. I want to do it now. I want to begin now to say, what are you willing to cut back on?
Right.
In order to pay for this person? And in the prospect of going down this road with you, think of how the people are going to react to this in the town. They're suddenly going to come to the awareness that somebody's listening to them and not continuing to take out of their pockets. I want a positive approach to this right here, what we're doing right now. Can I vote for it? Yes, then I can vote for it.
Yeah, and I will say, I don't think anyone is just proposing that we sort of just add a position willy-nilly, or that we just add excess money to the budget. The library has been working pretty hard over the last few years to run as leanly as possible, to cut our expenses. We are absorbing a position through attrition this year because we are mindful of not wanting to just, keep expanding our budget bigger and
Well, right,
bigger needlessly. So, that is, definitely understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, I just want to start now. I want to begin it right now at the beginning.
All right.
Make,
I-
and show the people that it can be done.
Is this also something that we could look to neighboring municipalities in aiding us? Funding?
Yes. Could
Or is
So-
there
Well,
So
that
the
that would
idea
be
is
part
that
of their
this
charge
person-
conceivably.
Would
So-
help increase the funding we get
Right.
from those
It's-
neighboring
That would,
municipalities.
that would
yeah.
certainly be, Brian, that's
And
that's a
what they're
brilliant
upset
point,
about.
but to me, that's
It's all tied
certainly
together.
part of their charge.
That would be part of their
I
charge,
need
for sure.
to ask two things here, as I have a personal issue that I need to address with my wife who's in the hospital. There's 2 points I wanted to cover, and then I wanted to sneak out early, if I may, please, not to be, I wanted to cover 7A, and I wanted to cover 9A, and then I'm gonna ask, Mr. President Ricard to take over in my, absence, because visiting hours end at 9. So, if we could, Darlene, do you mind if we
I'd like to
close on that?
officially move to table the hiring of that position
Okay.
at this
Yeah.
time, and we'll revisit
Mrs.
it
Funk, are you
next
good
month.
with that?
I'm good with that.
To
We're gonna
revisit again
Table it?
next month?
Yes.
Next month,
Okay.
pending.
Okay, so Bill,
Or if
we
you have
are
it ready for,
definitely
but
tabling.
Yes.
if they have it ready for,
Say next month
for
or
next week, that would be, well, okay, but, we're not putting you under the gun. But
Well, I guess my question. Table it till next month or table it to
Next
next
month.
week?
Next month.
next
okay.
month, okay.
It gives you
Okay.
more time, more
That's the
time.
soonest. Nobody.
Well,
I'm going,
second that?
A motion,
okay, so motion, a second, please.
Counselor Funk said.
In my motion, I'll second.
Motion, so can we have a
Somebody else
second on
motioned.
that?
She seconded, I
You
motioned.
second it, all right. Those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Jenna, thank you very much. That was, I think this is really good, and I know I've been not the biggest supporter of studies for the sake of doing studies, but I find this is one of the best ones that I've seen, and perhaps we could use this as an example for ones going forward. The fire one comes to mind. If we may, go to point 7A,
can we
on the rental registration and inspection. We want to approve the advertisement of the ordinance, and I would like to make a motion to amend the ordinance as presented to limit the initial process to the registration portion and to pair off the actual inspection to some point in the future and utilize Chris Miller, our Director of Codes and Enforcement, his efforts, which have been, from everything I hear, see, very successful. And I'd like to give him the ability to expand what he's doing, and I'd like us to consider perhaps an expansion to his resource, not this evening, But anyway, so I'd like to take 7A, and I would like to pair off from it the inspection and do the, limit it to the registration.
You made a motion,
I'm making the motion, I believe is that correct?
Well, let's.
How does that work? What is the proper process?
So if the motion is to,
Amend?
well, is to approve advertisement of it, you don't have it in front of you. I mean, you have the full ordinance in front of you, but not the revised one. So
Okay.
if you direct staff to revise it, then
Okay.
it should come back in a revised format, so you can vote to advertise it.
So can we do that by Wednesday, a week from today?
On what, Scott? What do you want?
On
He's on
item, on
7A.
7A?
I am very, can I say something here? I'm very happy. I'm really sharing opinions here tonight, but I'm very happy with Chris and with his code enforcement, and I'm glad we hired him. I really am. I think he's doing a fabulous job. What I need to know, under what I've been given, is that under inspections, it says each residential rental unit shall be inspected by the property maintenance code officer. That'd be Chris, right? No.
Could be, but could also be a third party who you would appoint as that a position. So you would
What do you
hire
mean
somebody and say,
We
you
would
are my
hire
property
another
maintenance.
company to come in.
Not- Potentially, yes. You wouldn't hire another staff member. I would suggest that you would hire a third party who would do that for you.
To do what for me?
The inspection.
Inspections.
So this
And
would
you
be,
would
and
give them
instead of
that
Chris,
title.
we'd hire a third party, which I don't agree
Why?
with. I think.
Pass that, whatever that costs the borough will be passed to the rental owner.
What?
Or,
It wouldn't cost us anything to hire a third party to do it. It would cost the homeowner.
As long as we
Would approve
charge
that, yes.
correctly, yeah.
I would like to discuss this further. I am not in a position, as part of the council, to make a decision on this. And I think sometimes we jump so fast that we jump through our pants and hang ourselves. And at this point, it says, or other designee of the borough. I want it spelled out clear. This doesn't, I read things and I go, okay, so who would the designee be? And, and then I go down through all this reading and I go, okay, why are they doing that? Or they haven't really specifically spelled it out. I sit here, and if I'm gonna make decisions, I want things spelled out to me. I want them spelled out. I don't wanna sit here and guess. It's the same as, no, and I'm gonna
Excuse me
say
for a
this, it's
second,
the
though.
same as going to a meeting of zoning, and I don't know why we're not changing these things, in which they have to bring in a plan, not a fourth grade drawing from a person, and I'm supposed to assume, all this knowledge that isn't there for me. I can't judge, I can't make better decisions for what I'm doing here in council. We represent the people, and if I'm gonna make these decisions, you better start giving me the facts, and I mean line them up. She did a
Darling,
terrific job on
Counselor,
we
No, let me
have to
just-
discuss
Let me just
this.
point one thing out. Like it or not, and I don't want to debate that, but I believe that provision is put in there to give council greater authority or flexibility.
On the
with how-
designee,
Yeah, with how we would administer it. We don't know necessarily right now all the economics of the program. For example, would it make sense for it to be a borough employee, or would we outsource it?
Aha.
Either way, it's.
or a combination of both.
Then-
It's the
okay.
document that the individual that council would
But we would
choose
vote on that.
would enforce it.
now see,
So
that's
it's not-
good. I
okay.
understood what you said to me.
Good.
But that's where I wanted
It's
to
not
see it
taking
here.
power from, it's keeping.
Right, but when I'm
Flexibility.
reading designee, I need some more spelling out on why you use this word and which ways we could go with it.
Right.
Then I can sit at night with a cup of coffee
And get it.
and say, oh, this is exactly what Eric meant,
Yeah.
and I know where he's going with it, and I know that we can go 2 or 3 different ways.
Right.
But I need to have this information.
And I'd like to make a point,
Thank you.
because in defense of Eric, the draft of this ordinance came out months ago for the council to review and provide comments back. That was the time at which these should have been brought
And
to
we
the
were
table.
remiss in that, you are correct.
So I'm not gonna sit here and listen to the attack on this side saying it's not clear
I'm
enough.
not
when
attacking Eric,
You are
Chuck.
saying it's not clear
I'm asking for
enough.
more information.
What you're saying is it's not clear enough for you when you had the opportunity to request that it be made
And
clear.
I did, and I call Eric when I have questions, okay? You're jumping the gun. When I'm saying
not
that you're
jumping the
handing
gun.
me this, and I'm reading it, and I'm looking at the wording, I'm just saying, can you make it easier for all of us to understand?
All right, can I
That's
ask
all
this?
I'm
Can I get a motion then on item 7A? We table this
Yes.
to this evening. We refine what we're doing and we review it either next week or a month from today.
I think it should come back to a finance meeting where we have,
Okay, so then we
We're not
review it
committed.
next month at this
So that
meeting.
we have time.
Okay.
Okay.
So then, we'll come back to item B. I'd like to do
Just
item.
quickly ask for some clarity, though. So
Certainly.
am I, in a month's time, to be bringing back to you an ordinance that is absent the inspection section?
No.
Or am I to bring
No.
back to you the ordinance as it is now, receiving some comment
Right.
from council as to what else they would like to see changed?
That's all I want. No, I want it to continue. You've done a lot of work on this. And I believe in the inspection. I believe in what you are doing here. You know that. I've talked to you. I just want to know when I'm reading it and it says designee, what do we talk, I mean, which way are we going with this? Are we going two or three different ways?
Scott's motion was to
The motion was to
delete the inspection.
amend,
to table it.
was to split it into just the
Registration.
registration, thank you, or the whole thing.
The
So,
whole-
That's
the
amending,
whole
correct?
thing.
so we could conceivably, for the next meeting, have version A, which is just the registration.
Right.
Or what we have proposed today, which is registration plus inspection with another methodology as opposed to Chris Miller's organization.
Right. Eric, can
Does that
I
make
have
sense to
your
you?
viewpoint on that?
No. So we have an ordinance laying in front of you now that is an
Right.
ordinance that is encompassing of inspections. I see two things happening. I see one, a request for some additional clarity on terms and terminology and things, and that's fine. I
Thank you.
can work to that. If given that information, I can make those edits. The more primary concern I have is the content of what I am bringing back to you. And is that content to be inclusive of an inspection program, or is this council directing me to move forward to bring you back a revised ordinance with the clarity in the language, but be absent the inspection process?
No.
What I would
And
not
utilizing
want to
the
do is I
existing-
don't want to bring you two drafts and be waving around two different things. I feel like it's gonna confuse things. So if you can give me some direction, I can get you what you want, and then you as a council can go forward from there.
Where I thought we could go with this is Chris Miller's efforts seem to be very successful in what he's doing. And the authority that he has today and the process that he's using are working very well. And we could give him additional resource, a full-time person, another part-time, I don't know what that is, that's up to you and Mr. Miller to ascertain that. Where we don't need a secondary inspection ordinance / process / group of people, albeit in-house or, I hate to use the word outhouse, because that's, outsourced.
Right.
I think the people we have already are doing a good job, and we should take advantage of that. That's sort of where
But inspection still has to be in there if he's going to do that.
well, he already has the authority to do that
It's
under.
not clarified under rentals
No,
to
you
do
have to
that.
clarify it, Scott. You have to let him know we want inspections. That's how it's going
The
to be
difference,
done.
the difference in the two approaches is very simple. It comes down to whether council chooses to have a sort of reactive position or whether you're going to have one that is a proactive position. In going forward with a registration that is inclusive of inspections, that's more progressive. You're getting in front of it. In the other scenario that's being offered where Mr. Miller is going out, those tend to be more reactive. Those are coming into our office, our department as calls, complaints, concerns.
Yep.
The officers, the police department brings us those things. So it's really a choice of your preference as a council of 10, how you choose whether you want to, again, bolster Mr. Miller's resources to continue a sort of reactive position for those things, or whether you want to go down a path of having the ordinance give you tools in a more proactive method, where you're getting in front of them before someone calls and complains.
So Chris is doing a preactive, and what we're doing is
Well,
looking
he's
at.
doing a reactive
He does
thing, and we
react.
have so much reactive workload in front of us
Right,
that adding this essentially parallel path isn't going, in my opinion, is going to accomplish
can't we
nothing.
have both on what Chris is doing and then do it the other way with the rentals? I mean, can it be done both ways?
I mean, Chris is not gonna he's not gonna stop doing responses to calls and complaints.
Right.
I mean, that's going to occur absent any of this discussion at all. It's really just a discussion of whether you wish to evolve those efforts. My take on it is purely blank. I will do what this council wishes me to do. We have it drafted, it does have the inspections in it now. If that's the will of this council, then we will continue that. If the will of the council is to alter that position and look at something different, by God, I'll accommodate that as well.
I
just
think
need
that what you
direction.
drew up is excellent, I really do. Under the inspections, I understood everything, basically everything you're saying. I just needed some clarification on some words, okay?
And that's a very fixable thing. I just want to make sure the substance of what the ordinance is, that's what lays in front of council now.
Right.
Is
I'm
do
for-
you want inspections or do you not want them?
I'm for inspections.
Well, do we need to table
Hey, I
it for
got
a
a
week? or
point
do
of
we need to
order,
table it for a
question,
month?
down here on this end. I have a question.
Sure.
2 meetings ago, didn't we vote for inspections?
What?
And that, 2
Well,
meetings
I-
ago, we voted for inspections. That's why Eric put this
Yeah,
together to
he
bring
did.
to us tonight.
Right.
Now we want to pull the inspection part out. What-
No, I
what
don't
happened?
want to pull the
I'm not saying
inspection
you, I'm just
part
saying
out.
it
I
seems
did
like
not
that's what
say
Scott
that, I
wants to
just
do.
want clarification on some words.
I didn't say that's what you said. Please
Oh.
listen
Remove
to what
that
I
from the
thought.
conversation. That's taken care of. I
All
will get
gone,
with you. I
right?
will
Okay.
make the word changes. I think what is here is more of a substance issue. You know, do you want the inspections or not? And there's some opinion that we don't want it, there's some opinion we do want it. I need the clarity so that I can bring you a document that has what it is council would like.
Well, it sounds like we don't, more work needs to be done on this, and when I talked to the other council members, myself included, I didn't truthfully realize that we voted for the whole
We did.
ball of wax, if you
Yeah, we
will,
did.
2 months ago or whatever. I kind of,
We told,
maybe
when
I'm
the draft
foolish
came
or
out, when
was.
the draft
told
came out.
Eric to go ahead and do it. And I
Right.
remember that. We told Eric to go ahead, and he did, okay? If there's a way of making the town better through this, and all the work that Eric put into it, Scott, I'm for it, okay? And I don't want it to wait 6 months or 7 months, because it just goes away on its own.
I don't think it changes anything we're already doing with the efforts that Chris has in place. He's got more to do than he can do today. I
Right.
think by giving him the resource, the additional resource that he needs.
One
he
person
will
could
get-
never do those inspections, to add in one person.
Right.
There's no way.
Agreed, you have 3,200 households, give or take a few hundred. You know, if you go through the numbers, it would take 3 or 4 people to do this, full-time.
And I'd just like to add to that point. Historically, when this was, became an action item under, we had Manager Bowersox at the time, and when asked the question, I know because I asked the question, with the number of rental properties we have, does the math work that 2 people could do it on a biannual basis? That's 2 basically full-time people. That's all they do, and it was determined that we would probably be a little bit light. So
Right.
my comment earlier to Counselor Cress's question or comment was, I just want to make sure that whatever version of this we're doing, it's self-funding. And
Correct.
that we don't set a rate so low that we
Right.
potentially need to look at whether it's in-house or outsourced a model that says we need to have enough people to do it
Has
right.
anyone checked
Exactly.
on the out?
Because we don't want to screw it up.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
Exactly.
Chris, sorry.
If
No.
anyone, has anyone checked when these companies that do this, or the outsourcing, of what the charge would be per unit?
Yeah.
We looked at our
Or,
communities,
you know.
I don't have the number on the tip of my tongue, but we did look at other communities to see, and they are generally within a ballpark number. They weren't wildly all over the place. They seem to be within a certain amount to cover the cost.
And it was,
I don't have that number on the tip of my tongue, I
I know
remember
Spring
looking
Grove's
at
a
it.
while back was somewhere around $55.
What was it again?
Around $55 per unit, but
Per
that's,
unit
that's
for
a-
inspection?
yes.
Okay,
That was a
thank
few
you.
years ago, and that was Spring Grove.
Wow, 2 years ago? It's gotta be higher now.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, it's,
Yeah.
just to
How
give you a
far have we
ballpark.
gotten with the economics of this? Or, I mean, bear in mind that when we moved into a newer way of doing things where we approve a lot of fee changes, in one document, whereas we used to take them all on. So we're at least, do we have a proposed number, or that, we're gonna flesh that out?
That would be the next logical step in the process if
Okay,
you
when
keep
we
inspections there.
roll it out.
I mean, there is also a potential compromise, if you will, of the whole thing, which is that you keep inspections there, but to the point that was sort of made earlier, perhaps we focus our efforts initially on the registration piece. Let's get solid on making sure that we have everyone registered, that we have a head count of where all of the rental units are, and that people are used to the idea that you need to register with the borough for your rentals. There is an ordinance in place now that does mandate registration. It's not followed. There's no infrastructure in the borough right now to truly manage that. We collect them, the good ones submit them to us, but the other ones sort of skirt around it.
How do
So-
we get that to them, Eric? I mean,
How do we get what?
do the people have to go online to get these
So,
applications?
that's what I'm
And-
going to suggest
And for
is-
those who don't have a computer, how do
You
you,
would go to the library, you would go to any public place. We have made provisions in our office at times where someone truly can't get anywhere. We've made provisions for them to enter that information.
Okay.
My point, though, would be that you could move forward with this, and you could keep including the inspection piece, but what you could do is move it forward in a way that phase one of the project is to register first and to understand the implications of inspection. You know, we can look at the pricing, we can look at the numbers. I can sit in front of you and say, I have a definitive X number of rental units. I don't have that for you now. I mean, we can pull from census data and get some idea, we can see it in our KVS data system, but I don't have a solid number to say this is the number of
Well,
rentals
it's-
in the borough.
at that level, then
So we
we're
could move that forward and then revisit the inspection piece. So I would be suggesting to you that we not scrap the inspection piece, but that we delay it for some time until we get our feet under us with the registration and then understand what Mr. Miller's resource needs are. I mean, keep in mind, he's not a year yet into us. So all the things he's done in a very truncated amount of time. If we give him the time to continue those efforts and build some resources under him, then we can see where we land, and then we can have a real informed discussion about how to roll out inspections and what level might be needed.
Does what's before us give that flexibility in that we don't necessarily have
I
to
would have
roll
to
out the
write that
inspection
in.
piece? That's-
I would
that's
have
my
to
thought.
do that because I'm making this up as I'm sitting in
No,
front
no, I
of you.
mean, what
so-
this speaks to is like, we're going to do both in this document, so we
Yeah,
would
so I would
need
have
a
to
document
somehow
tweak.
work with the counselor to
So you'll-
some language that
Right.
could set the stage for that.
you'll propose an amendment for next week or next month?
I wouldn't have it done in a week's time. 'Cause
Do we
I'd
forward
need
it
make
to
the
next
change.
month
And
then?
hearing that there's some textual changes and things that need to happen, I'd want to change
think
it
it's the
too.
next month
So
thing.
my motion for you guys would be to table it to next month, your direction to me to find some way to create a scaled phase-in where inspections are not thrown out, but instead we're gonna focus on registration first and public education and outreach and get that, and then move into the inspection piece when we can better maybe understand what that looks like.
And what the costs
We can
and
look at the
management
costs and
process.
We'll have a
right.
number, I'll know how
Both
many
dir-
rentals.
Right, direct and indirect cost.
So Eric,
And Jim, you're on board with, when I say direct and indirect cost, you get that.
For the horse.
Can you can get your, arms around that? Because this is the kind of thing that could have almost as much indirect cost as it has direct.
And I'd like to think that this group will weigh the cost. I mean, we need to know that, because we could be passing something that could, if I said, personal opinion, I think it would make sense that the program supports itself, it doesn't lose money. I need to know whether that's $1,000 or 55 or anywhere in between.
It's going to look very much like the effort I went through when I came into this borough and looked at your building permits.
Right.
And your building permits, you were bleeding. And so we fixed that, and we found out how to align the fees so that we are
Yes,
subsidizing
you
the
did.
cost
Yeah.
of what my department's efforts are. This would follow in that same vein.
Tweak the language, work the economics, and let's try to entertain it. for
So if
next
everyone's
business
agreeable, I will bring that back in a month's time, keeping inspections, but in a phased approach. And if you can get me your comments that you'd like clarity on, I will blend those in as well.
Just
Okay, so I'll
designate,
modify my
just
motion.
throwing things out. I just need to know which direction, or give me different directions to consider when we come here, okay?
So I'll modify my original motion to be what Eric just said. Is that okay, Dory, to say that? Eric, you want to restate that for the record, please?
So the motion would be to authorize the Department of Planning and Engineering to proceed with modifications to the ordinance that would create a phased-in approach for inspections, but would focus on registration in the onset.
Yeah. And then continue on.
And put a business plan, if you will, or whatever, around the inspections side of it.
Some rough economic analysis.
Yes.
Projected.
But understanding, if we focus on the registration, that's a discussion, could be a year out till we have that, or some period of time after.
Not the registration, you mean the
No,
inspection?
the inspection, you're talking about business plans, so that, I don't know if we would
Correct.
have that right away.
So that's your
And I-
motion, Scott.
That's my motion. Can I have a
Second.
second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, any comments? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I thank everyone for that. I have one last point before I leave. I'd like to go to item 9. 9A, the zoning ordinance amendment, and receiving the work product of the Planning Commission, approve the advertisement of the ordinances. As the former vice chairman of the Planning Commission up until, I guess it was February when I resigned from that, you know, we put forth the zoning ordinance update a little over a year ago, knowing there were issues with it that had to be addressed. And this work product that's presented here today are the amendments that have been sort of the amalgamation, maybe that's not the correct word, of the last 14 or so months of learning and modifying the zoning ordinance that we put forward. I hope everybody's read it and they've read the sort of delta that was put together of the old versus the new. And if I may, can I get if I make the motion, can I get a second
I'll give you a second.
on that?
Eric,
Mrs.
weren't you
Funk?
going to do a presentation on it?
Thank you.
I think in the interest of time and all the other presentations, I can sum it up very simply that the councilman's right. Basically, this is carrying through on a promise I made to you when we adopted the last zoning, and that was that I would come back to you within roughly 6 months' time with a list of edits, because there were some things that we wanted to continue working on, and we also knew that with an ordinance so new, there's just things that we can't see. And we're gonna have to catch those by putting it out there and working on it and starting to realize where we needed to make those tweaks and changes. This work product that comes to you from Planning Commission now is really a good work product. I mean, they have literally spent the last 6 to 9 months working on this thing and going back and forth, and, you know, and Gannett Fleming as our planning consultant has really been helpful to help us ask the right questions to make sure that we're looking at things correctly. And, you know, I'm always an advocate that, you know, a stale ordinance is an ineffective ordinance. You want your ordinance to be alive, you want it to be moving, you want it to be changing. This borough is certainly not stale, it's changing, its needs are changing, and we need to make sure the two are in alignment. So all that's being asked tonight really is to move that zoning ordinance forward, carrying those changes, carrying those edits, and that work product that planning has given to you.
So, you know, and remember, we're rather unique compared to our surrounding municipalities, where the vast majority of our work is redevelopment or repurposing as opposed to greenfields, because we don't really have any green left. So that's what's so different and unique about what we're doing here. So we
So
got a
this-
motion?
Yeah, so this
Darla,
motion moves it
Darlene,
forward.
a second?
Yeah, we should amend the motion. So
Okay.
I'm gonna
Please,
articulate what I think ought to be moved. Is one, to receive the work product of the planning commission, and two, to approve the ordinance of the advertisement of the ordinance, public hearing, and all other steps necessary to adopt the zoning ordinance amendment.
all right.
So motion.
You were your second?
You're all right with that as a second?
Seconded.
Any comments, discussion on that? Okay. Do we need a roll call on that, Dory? Probably.
No, it's just for advertising.
Oh, okay. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. And if you don't
Outta
mind,
here.
I'm gonna try and step out of here.
About the back, Jack. Make a new plan,
Thank
Stan.
you. I apologize for leaving early, but
Our prayers go out to you, Councilman World,
I'm sorry?
for your wife.
Thank you very much.
If you need anything, let us
Good
know.
luck.
I sincerely appreciate it. She's my favorite wife.
Have a good evening, Scott.
As the chair feels familiar. Okay. I'm going to take us back in the agenda to try to get us back on some reasonable sense of order. And I have us going back to item 5, 5B, actually, the Assistant Public Works Director. Ms. Hill, are you ready to speak on that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I don't have much more to add besides what was in your memo and your packets. The Assistant Director for Public Works has been fulfilling this role since February and doing a great job. And we're just asking that the original stipend was approved through the end of August. So what I'm asking is for you guys to extend it through the end of the year. We're working on a reorganization of sorts to kind of put different departments under different people. And that plan will be presented to you later in the year. And when we're with an implementation of that plan as of January. So this would just allow us to keep the structure as it is right now through the end of the year, so that when January rolls around, if you guys approve the reorganization plan, it'll start from there.
Any
Amy,
questions?
if you need a motion, you've got it.
I'll second it.
I've got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, a nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving into agenda item 6, that being governance and policy, take-home vehicles.
Yeah, so as you might remember, last year, we presented to you a vehicle and equipment policy, which employees now have all signed. So anyone who drives borough vehicles or uses borough equipment has signed the policy stating that they understand what the rules are around that. Part of that policy states that only those approved by council to take home vehicles may take home vehicles. So then that requires you to approve this list of people who are, positions that are permitted to take vehicles home. And those positions are limited to the positions which are required to respond in the case of an emergency. So as you'll see, it's a police chief, fire chief, director of public works, assistant director of public works, and the water distribution supervisor. So,
You need a
Questions?
motion?
Yeah, we need a
I will
motion.
motion, yeah. Amy
Second.
did a good job on that.
Motion, a second. Any further questions? I'll call into question. All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, a nay. That one carries. We will keep moving along. Anybody want to go back to 7A?
No.
Just kidding. Just kidding. We're going to move into 7B, that being abandoned or junk vehicles ordinance. Do we need to talk about that?
Nope. I
Need a
think
motion then.
So motion.
Second?
Seconded.
All in
It's a roll
favor?
call, right?
What's that?
Is that just?
No, next week. No, it's, this is getting it to council, so.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Okay, we're moving into item 8. Who's talking to us about the Neptune Smart Meter Project? $2 million.
So I'll cue this discussion up, and then certainly Jim can tag in on it. So last month, I was to you pitching the idea of a smarter water network. And I believe that this council agreed in that concept. However, there was a request made of myself as well as Mr. Shelton that we come back with some analysis to look at the numbers to make sure that there was a, what we call return on the investment. And I think at this point, Jim has been able to work through those numbers, and we are able to show what that return on investment looks like. And we're actually able to see when that occurs within the life of our asset. And that's what the important part is. You want to make sure that you get your return before the asset is past its design life. So the action that's asked of you now is to really approve of the initial investment in the amount of $2 million, which the return on investment analysis has shown that is within acceptable means.
Sounds pretty much like you covered everything there. I'll need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A second. All in favor, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? That'll go to council. We'll move into emergency repairs. $28,000 at the filter plant.
So the water filter plant has a series of network switches that help it communicate and help make sure that it's doing the reporting that it needs to do to DEP. A number of those switches have been kind of spotty lately. And so when we started to really look at them, what we come to realize is that actually a couple of them are not working. They're causing some of the workstations to be locked up for extended periods of time. And there are periods of time where we have to resort back to manual data keeping because the electronic data keeping is not working. So in understanding the implications of what it means for us to have to be compliant with DEP for our water system, I went ahead and authorized those network improvements to be made because they needed to be done quickly, and they are still in the process of being done as I speak to you. So this is really to ratify that authorization that I gave because I needed to.
Mr. Maines, you had me at locked up.
Also motion.
I have
Second.
a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And lastly, under item 8 would be the 2021 System Improvement Project.
Just a quick note, we had a change order where, if you'd like to see a funny picture, if you come into my office, there's a picture of a water line that comes at a storm sewer line, goes up and over and keeps going. We had to remove that. We didn't know it was there when we originally bid the project out, and we had to put appropriate valves that actually go the way you're supposed to go when you intersect with the utility. So it's a great picture, but I'm asking now for approval for a change order to fix that.
So
So
moved.
motion.
Picture's worth 1,000 words, or $5,803.33. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll second it.
We had the, do the second. Okay, that motion carries. So we will move into 10, or 9 was taken care of. We're on 10, being public safety, no parking ordinance amendments. Do we need
You
anything
want a
on that?
motion on that?
I do, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you've got it.
okay, and that would be on both I and double I, Grant Drive and
Right,
East
1 and
Chestnut.
2, yeah.
Okay, so we'll vote on them together. Is there a second?
Second. No.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The bike repair station at Fat Bat Brewery. Is there a motion to approve the agreement for the grant-funded project?
So moved.
Second.
So moved on the bikes. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
One opposed?
You opposed? Okay.
All in favor with one opposed? Counselor Greenhold. Okay, that gets us to report of councils, council committees, and other public bodies. Are there any at this time? Seeing none, we'll
Well,
move
no,
in.
I have a question.
Question? No, hang on, I didn't ask for questions yet. Are there any reports of those committees?
Well,
Okay.
it sort of kind of
Questions?
is. I'm another public
questions.
body. I had a meeting with Amy. We met with the York County SPCA about the contract. I don't know if that's something do they have to approve that, or how does that work?
They have not sent us their new contract. We met with them and talked about the benefits that we get from that contract, but they have not sent us anything that is prepared to be presented yet.
But the good news is they're not, it's staying the same. It's the same amount as last year. So, and then, I don't know if you have any information on the baseball ticket thing?
I've received very little response. A couple people have mentioned that they're interested, but it's, I guess it'll be up to you guys what you want to do, how many you would be interested in, and then we can either raffle them or offer them, depending how many people are interested.
All right, I'll talk to you about that.
Okay.
That's September
8th.
Yeah, I remember you told me about that. Okay. Are there any management reports anyone's dying to give? If you're not dying to give, we don't want to hear it. Under correspondence and information, I'll take the baseball. Is there anything else under correspondence and information?
I'd like to hear what you've done.
All right, additional public comment. Those of you who have waited patiently through an hour and 50 minutes almost, you get the right to speak first. Seeing none, I'll ask our friends at Community Media to open us up to our electronic channels of communication.
If you're joining us via Zoom, you can unmute yourself. If you'd like to address council, you just click the microphone icon to do so.
Nothing? Okay, we will close the last public comment portion of the meeting. And at this time, your interim chair requests a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. See you next Wednesday.